just an introduction.
Hi, good morning. Oh, good evening dyan sa inyo. Ako lang yata nandito sa States. Morning dito. I was born in the Philippines in Quezon province, but they changed the province. Now it's called Aurora, Dingalan, Aurora. And moved from, I was an orphan at an early age. I moved from relatives to relatives and then, finished high school, college, and married. And then we ended up in Texas in 1983. And we've been here since then. You'll hear more about it later on. I'm in the nursing home and assisted living facility business, and also in the real estate development. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dionicio Rivera. Sir, can you give us your inspirational life testimony? Sir, you may now begin.
Okay. Good evening or good morning. My name is Dionicio Rivera, and I was born in the Philippines. I was born in Dingalan, Quezon. I am what you call an ulilang lubos. I'm an orphan from an early age. My mother died when I was maybe 2.5 or 3 years old. I don't even remember her face. I don't have any recollection how she looks. It's just, I have one picture of her before, but I lost that picture already. And then my family, we own some strips of land in a little barrio in Bagong Sikat. But when my mother got sick, my dad started to sell that property so she can get some treatment. And my relatives were mad at my dad because of what he was selling. He's selling the ancestral, properties that we have. And then when she died, we moved from place to place, and we ended up in Baler, Dingalan, where I was born, and then back to Gabaldo, Nueva Ecija. And then my father died when I was 7 years old. So now, we ended up with, relatives. The relatives of my father, because they were mad at my dad, they were not really very nice to us. So we ended up with the relatives of my mom. And, I stayed in one place, and I was about 8 years old, and I have not, been to school. So every morning when I see the kids walking towards the school, I have the urge and the desire that somehow I can go to school. So my brother and I have an agreement, and he's listening. He's, in one of the participants right now. So we have an agreement that he would work for somebody for 2 kabans of rice, 2 sacks of rice a year. And that sack of rice will be given to me for my sustenance where I'm staying with a relative so I can go to school. So I went to school, grade 1 at 8 years old. And then the following year, another relative took me, and they said they are going to, send me to school. So I went. But that was not a pleasant experience either. And then I went to a third relative. This relative, though, is, a lot better because, they are Christian, and, I like them. My aunt who is also a widower, had 2 children, and my cousins are older than myself. After that year, grade 3, after grade 3, I moved back to the first relative where we stayed. And my aunt then at the time remarried, and then we ended up working in the farm. Well, I told my aunt I really wanted to go to school, and she promised she would send me to school. But when enrollment came, I wasn't enrolled, and I was very unhappy. And my brother, we have a cousin that wanted to go to Manila the following week, and my brother wanted to go with him. And I said, no, you better not leave me here. So we put up a scheme to where we would have to live together. And 5 o'clock in the morning when the bus, passed by, we just hopped into the bus, and, we ended up in Manila. I was about 12 years old in Manila. My brother found a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant. I found a job as I wash clothes and linen in a small hotel. That was a hard work, but at least I have a place to stay and have food, and I have, money every end of the month. And then the third relative where I stayed, I really like, the way they treated me in there. So I wrote my cousin and says, I miss Artacho. And every Saturday we go to church. And I told them I also miss Sabbath school, which is, where they teach you the stories of the Bible. And my cousin sent that letter to her brother who is in Manila. And that brother started looking for me in Manila and found me where I was at and asked if I would like to go back to his mom. And I said yes, because I wanted to go back to school. So 14 years old, I was grade 4. And I'm the oldest student in the class. Well, to make the long story short, I finished high school in that academy. And then I went to college as a working student and, finished a bachelor's degree in accounting, and then, started to work. Well, I married my high school sweetheart, and she's a registered nurse, and she found a job and came to the US. And then, she came for 2 years and came back and brought myself and my daughter with her to come to Texas in 1983. We've been in Texas since 1983. It was not an easy, thing to come to the US. In fact, I had a hard time looking for a job. But then because her uncle, my wife's uncle, had a nursing home, that's where we ended up. And I took a training to become a nursing home administrator. And when I finished that training, I started looking for a job. The kind of job that I found is a big company. The largest nursing home chain in the United States. The number 2 and number 3 can only equal to Beverly Enterprises at the time. The job that they gave me is a floating administrator, because they have so many nursing homes, they lose administrators, and when they don't have one, they, ship me in that nursing home, and I clean that up, and then they hire another administrator and then move on to, to another one. I did that for 2.5 years, and because we have young kids, I told myself I needed a job where I don't have to be traveling overnight. So I left that company and worked for somebody else. We ended up in El Paso, Texas, and that's where we have been ever since. Now, we have, been able to establish ourselves over here, had a good reputation. And one day, a friend of mine came to my office and he asked me to go with him because he wanted to buy a nursing home. So we went to that place that he was gonna buy the nursing home. But Mr. Johns, who is the owner of the nursing home, told my friend Rudy, his name is Rudy, he said, Rudy, I'm not gonna sell my nursing home to you because you bought my nursing home, my dad's nursing home last year, and you didn't do a good job. And he said, well, that's the reason why I brought Dione with me, so that, we can work together to, to buy your nursing home. But Mr. John said, no, I don't really want to do that. So maybe you can give me 2 or 3 weeks and see if, I would reconsider. So we left. Rudy was unhappy, and, I was also not expecting that kind of treatment that we got. 2 weeks after that, Mr. Johns came to my office and he said, Dione, I would rather sell the nursing home to you. And I told Mr. Johns, Mr. Johns, I cannot even talk to you because I was brought to you by Rudy. And that would not be right for me to talk to you without him knowing it. So he understood that. And I said, let me talk to Rudy and see what, we can come up with. So I talked to Rudy, and Rudy was not really happy, but he was wanting to be part of the deal. And if I could convince Mr. Johns that we become partners, and then, we can run his nursing home. But when I went to talk to Mr. Johns, he was firm that Rudy would not be part of the deal. However, I told Mr. Johns, I said, Mr. Johns, I don't even have money. I can't even think of, buying any nursing home at this point. So he said, well, start looking for some money, and I am going to medical school, and I'm not going to miss that opportunity. That's what he told me. So I have to sell this nursing home. So then 2 weeks after, I thought I could raise some money. And so I gave him an offer, but I wasn't able to raise the money. So I told Mr. Johns, I said, no, I'm gonna, pull out my offer, and, I'd rather not do anything because, I don't really have the money. So he said, well, if I self-finance the deal, do you think you wanted to, to take it? And I said, well, I don't know. I told him, let me find out what I can do. So he wanted $250,000 US as a down payment, but I don't even have that kind of money. So after 2 weeks, I called him again and went to his office, and I told him, no, I could not really, raise the money. I don't have a means to do it. He said, well, I really wanted to go to school. And he said, this is your only opportunity to get a nursing home of your own, and my only opportunity to become a medical doctor. So I said, yeah, but, if I don't have the means, I can't really do anything. He said, I'm going to reduce your down payment. Can you raise $50,000? I said, Mr. Johns, I don't even have that kind of money. So I left his office, and I was talking to my wife, and, that conversation for 2 weeks, that's the kind of a conversation we had with my wife. And Norma, that's her name, my wife's name is Norma, after 2 weeks told me and said, what if I can find the $50,000? You know, would you make me a partner of the business? I want half of the business. I said, now you're being a businesswoman rather than being a nurse. I told her jokingly. He said, well, can you really raise the $50,000? And she said, yes. So her and myself went to Mr. Johnson. I told him, yes, we have the $50,000, but these are my deals. So we sat down, you know, in a hotel, not a hotel, a restaurant. And it's about 10 o'clock and we were, you know, they were about to close the restaurant and we were still there trying to haggle on the list that I have prepared. So he crossed out my list and signed it off and then handed me the keys, and he never came back to his office. Whatever personal stuff that he has, I have to put it in a box, and he never came back to the nursing home until 5 years later when he finished medical school. So that's how I ended up, you know, owning a nursing home. I didn't have any money of my own, but God has been good to us. Let me read something here that I found in, you know, somewhere later on. Success and wealth generation does not happen overnight, but through hard work, enthusiasm, and dedication to your most abundant life, you can learn what it takes to build massive prosperity and a lasting legacy for generations to come. Well, God has been good, and through that nursing home, we were able to, you know, do some side business. And there was a time when I bought some land. My daughter was going to school in South Fort Worth. So I visited her one day and I was reading that newspaper in that little town where she was at. And I knew that there was a business that filed bankruptcy. And then I saw the sign for sale, 20 acres of land near the university where my daughter was going to school. So I put a contract on that land, and my wife was mad at me because, you know, why would you even buy something that does not earn you anything? And I told her, control. I wanted to control that land. So we bought that land, and then through God's providence and everything, when gas was being discovered in, you know, West Texas, where they do the fracking, they started to lease land all over, and they contacted me and says, we want to lease your land so that we can, you know, drill gas wells, you know, underneath it. So I remember when during the closing of, you know, of that property, the contract says that mineral will not convey. So I told the guy that called me and said, no, I don't own the mineral rights. So I said, well, can you send me, you know, your contract? So I sent him a copy of my contract, and I never heard from him since then. But then 2 years after, I got another call, and he said, well, we're drilling, you know, gas, you know, all over the university, and your property is in the way for, you know, for us to drill. You know, we really need to lease your land. I said again, well, I talked to someone 2 years ago, and I don't own the mineral right. So again, he asked me, and this is a different person, he asked me to send him the contract, and then called me back in a, about a couple of days, and he said, Mr. Rivera, nobody owns the mineral rights on your land. And I said, what do you mean? I said, it says in the contract that mineral right will not convey. And he said, well, they have that kind of wording, but they don't own, the person that sold you the land don't own the mineral right either. So I said, well, how can you find out? And he says, well, I'm a landman, he said, and I will do the search. And if you promise to give me the deal, I will register the mineral right under your name. And I said, well, then you got a deal. So 2 weeks after, he called me and said, I got it registered and I'm sending the document to you, but I'm also sending, the gas lease so that you can sign and, and we can start drilling. So the amount that I paid for the surface of the land, I got more money in the gas lease than the amount I paid for the surface of the land. So God is good. And I still own the land at the time. And so my wife was happy because, we were able to get more money and pay for, the monthly payment that we were doing. I sold that land last year, and I was able to make about 450% from the amount that I, bought it for, plus the gas lease that I was able to make about 150% of the amount of what I paid for the surface of the land. So God has been good to us. All right. And now, last year or earlier this year, I also sold a property that I bought in the Philippines, and, we made some, little money. So anyway, that's the story of what we have. And through my trips to Manila, when I was running the hospital in Pangasinan, my alumni association built a hospital in Pangasinan, and I was elected as the president of that hospital even before it opened. So through my travel over there, I met Mark. I call him Leo. That's the name he was using at that time, but now he prefers to be called Mark. So I met him and we became friends. And, every time I go to the Philippines, we meet and, and have lunch or whatever. And, it's been a good, friendship. And I really appreciate Mark's friendship. And my trip last month, I wasn't really able to meet anybody, even my family. We went to my wife's family because her mom and her dad were getting sick and has been in and out of the hospital. And in fact, my wife's dad died last week, Thursday last week, and they're gonna bury him today. So we're not even able to go home because of the COVID situation. But we warned them already that we're not gonna be able to go home if he or my wife's mom dies. So that's the situation. Anyway, that's my story, and I have more stories to tell, but I think I'm gonna end there, and maybe there might be some questions later on that I should be able to answer. To close, what I would like to say is, education is really, really important. Can you imagine being 14 years old and you are in grade 4? You're the laughing stock of the students in the school. But nevertheless, I wanted to go to school, so I said, I don't care what they call me. And they call me an elder, but you know, I just take that as a joke. And we've been good. Perseverance is the other thing that helped me, you know, with my work, and also honesty. I think it's really, really important. You got to treat the people really well, and you know, you create a kind of character, and people will, you know, will not be scared to make a deal with you, like what Mr. John's did, or Dr. John. He's a doctor right now. He was the one that came knocking on my door and wanted to sell his nursing home, even though I didn't have the capacity to, you know, do it at that time. But you know, God has provided for us, and we love the Lord, and you know, we wanted to help people. And Mark, I'm going to talk to you more about Solace Rehabilitation Center later on a separate thing that, you know, we can talk about. I did not know about that, you know, company. Maybe, you know, I like to become a member of PABID, you know, an international member, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that this, you know, experience that I have will help others to, you know, send your kids to school. That's the only thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.